The chicken conspiracy was based on, even though we used the story that we got from DeMello, the real story inside the book started off as my personal analysis of myself. In earlier times, if you were going to do counseling or therapy, it was a requirement that you were not to sit down in a room to counsel or do therapy with anybody if you yourself have not been through counseling and therapy. And so while I was at in the med school, the chief of psychiatry and the chief psychologist became my mentors and helped me start to take apart and deconstruct my own personality to discover who Charlie might be underneath all this mess. And when I was teaching the sophomore class on abnormal psych, I suppose there's a coincidence here that I was teaching abnormal psych, I thought they need a real life example of, what is it like on the inside of people who are trying to wrestle through and get better. And I thought, well, I'm going through my own analysis right now. I'll just share that real time, real life with these Southmore medical students so they can, hear it from me, how it's working out for me as I'm going through it. And so I went ahead and started to talk about how my experience had been, and the part that actually itself was transforming for me is that at the end of the class, normally the students just file out and disappear, and maybe one or two people will, either challenge something you said or ask a question, but I suddenly found 8 or 9 people had gathered around the podium up front, and they said one after another, they said, "That's not just your story." And what I began to discover is they were saying that what you talked about is what's going on in me. Well, after that, I kept refining and understanding myself, but I would share it with more and more groups, and the same thing happened. People kept saying, "I see myself in what it is you're telling me." And that's when I finally came to the conclusion that what we're talking about here is not unique to me. We're looking at something going on in people that other people have had go on in them as well. And probably a good decade or more, well, actually 2 decades went by, and I gave that story to literally hundreds and hundreds of groups and thousands of people. And the response was inevitably the same. And then I kept having people say, "Well, where can I read this?" or "Where do you find this?" So with that kind of pressure, eventually we decided to write a book. Well, when I got the chicken conspiracy analogy, I said, that's it. I was a chicken. I was an eagle inside, but I was afraid to give it birth and to let it fly, to let it soar. And if everybody else is telling me that's true for them too, then maybe that's what we need to call it. We'll just call it the chicken conspiracy, but we will describe this journey of how we block ourselves from being our best, which of course led into the future book of letting go of our chickens and becoming whatever else we're destined to be.